One of them will be making mortgage payments until they're 79 years old. The other paid theirs off years early and never posted about it once. Same street, same year, same exact starting loan. The only difference between them is a decision so small that neither of them would have called it a decision at the time. There's a pencil mark on a doorframe in Ohio that is 19 years old. It says Emma, age 4, next to a line barely 3 feet off the ground. 6 inches above it, a newer mark. Emma, age 15, same doorframe, same house, same family that never left. 2 houses went up on that street in 2007. Same builder, same floor plan, same closing date, same starting mortgage of $178,000. One family is still in theirs. The other has moved 3 times since, chasing better schools, more space, a lower rate. Nobody would call either family reckless. Nobody would call either family lucky. But 19 years later, the gap between them isn't really about money at all, or it is, but not in the way you'd think. By the end of this, you'll know exactly which one you are, and exactly what it's already costing you. You move into the house in the fall of 2007. The paint is a color called oatmeal that the builder chose, not you. There's a doorframe just inside the kitchen entrance that catches your eye the first week. The kind of blank vertical space that seems to be waiting for something. You don't think much of it. You unpack boxes, you learn which cabinet door sticks. You figure out that the upstairs bathroom takes 40 extra seconds for the water to run hot. In one version of this story, that's where it starts and stops. You live in the house, you raise your kids in the house. Every June on Emma's birthday, you make her stand against that door frame and you mark the top of her head in pencil. It becomes a tradition nobody planned. It just happens once. And then it has to happen every year after that. Because now there's a line from last year sitting there, waiting to be beaten. In the other version, you're standing in that same kitchen 4 years later, in 2011, looking at the same oatmeal walls, and what you feel isn't comfort. It's the sense that this house was always meant to be a starter. The layout is closed off, the lot is small. A coworker just moved into a new development 20 minutes north with an open floor plan and a 3-car garage. And when you visit for a barbecue, something in your chest tightens in a way you don't say out loud. 6 months later, you're signing papers on a bigger house. Nobody would call this a bad decision. Bigger house, growing family, better schools. It made complete sense on the Tuesday you signed for it. Both families are still making roughly the same income 4 years in, somewhere in the low 6 figures combined, both still paying under $1,300 a month on a 30-year fixed loan. Neither is ahead. Neither is behind. The starting line on paper is still even, except one of you just reset a mortgage that had already survived its most expensive years, and the other one just kept marking a doorframe every June without knowing that pencil line was quietly becoming the most accurate financial record of your entire adult life. Here's the part that never makes it onto a real estate listing. A 30-year loan is a machine that eats interest first and principal second. In year 1 on that $178,000 loan, something like 82% of every payment you send just covers interest. Money that builds you nothing. It isn't until somewhere around year 8 or 9 that the ratio finally flips, that more of your payment starts going toward the house you actually own instead of the bank's return on lending it to you. Every time you sell and buy again, you don't just pay agent commissions and closing costs, somewhere around 9 to 10% of the sale price, gone before you spend a night in the new place. You also reset that ratio back to year 1, back to the years where the loan barely moves. You do this now in 2011, 4 years into a loan that was just beginning to work in your favor. The doorframe family doesn't know any of this math. They're not thinking about amortization schedules on a random Tuesday in June while Emma stands against the wall in socks, trying to stretch her neck a half inch taller than she actually is. They just mark the line. they go back to dinner. Nobody explains to them that staying still was, without anyone intending it, the more sophisticated financial strategy. It just felt like nothing was happening. By 2015, the doorframe has 11 marks on it. Emma's and her younger brother's crossing and uneven, some years bigger jumps than others. The house looks basically the same from the street. The oatmeal paint got redone at some point, a slightly warmer shade this time, chosen on purpose. There's a crack in the driveway that's been there so long it stopped being a flaw and became a fact of the property, the kind of thing you step over without seeing anymore. The moved family is on their second move by now, into a house with the open floor plan and the 3-car garage they wanted, financed at a rate a full point higher than the original loan, because the market shifted between houses. There's no doorframe tradition here. There wasn't time to start one, and even if there had been, this isn't the house it would live in. This is the house before the next house, though nobody's calling it that out loud yet. The boxes from the last move are still in the garage, half unpacked, because some part of every mover eventually stops fully unpacking. There's no point arranging a bookshelf perfectly when a version of you already suspects you won't be looking at it in 5 years. That's the part nobody puts a number on. Not the moving costs, not the new rate, the way a house stops being a place you live and starts being a place you're passing through on the way to somewhere better. You can furnish it, you can host a holiday in it, but some low hum in the back of your mind is already scanning listings again before the first mortgage statement even arrives, because that's what the pattern has taught you to do. Once the distance between wanting something and going after it gets short enough, it stays short. It doesn't reset just because you unpack the last box. Then 2020 happens, and the number on every financial headline is 2.9%, a mortgage rate nobody alive has ever seen. Refinancing isn't just tempting, it's being framed everywhere as the responsible move. Lock it in before the window closes. Pull some equity while you're at it. Consolidate the debt from the last renovation. Lower your monthly payment even as home values keep climbing. The math on the calculator at 11 at night says yes. It says yes clearly and quickly. Here's what almost nobody says out loud about this exact moment, the one happening in kitchens across the country every time rates drop. A lower monthly payment doesn't feel like debt. It feels like relief. It feels like proof you did something smart. Nobody sits at that kitchen table feeling like they're making their 4th decade of payments start over from zero. They feel like they just got a raise. That feeling is real. And it is also the exact mechanism that keeps an entire generation making mortgage payments into their 70s without ever once feeling like anything went wrong along the way. What the calculator doesn't say is that this is the 3rd reset. 3rd time back to year 1 on the interest curve, 3rd round of closing costs, the moved family refinances, and on paper, their monthly payment goes down, which feels like winning. It is not winning. It is a longer road with a lighter first few steps. The doorframe family does nothing in 2020, not because they're disciplined in some visible, disclosed way, because there was never a reason to leave in the first place, so there's nothing pulling them toward a decision that season. Their loan, which started at $178,000 in 2007, has a balance under $70,000 by now. 13 years of an unremarkable, unchanged mailing address, quietly doing what an unchanged mailing address does. Now it's this year. Both families are around 50. Both still get up, make coffee, go to work. From the outside, 2 ordinary lives in the same general income bracket, same city, same rough decade of adulthood behind them. The doorframe family owes about $9,000 on a house that will be paid off before next spring. Emma is 19 now, away at college, and the last mark on that frame, from the June before she left, sits nearly a foot above the first one. Nobody photographed it for anything. Nobody posted it. It's just there in pencil, slightly smudged, a physical timeline of a childhood that happened to occur without an address change. The other family owes roughly $310,000 on a loan that resets to 2050 with the most recent refinance. They are not behind because they made bad choices. Every single one of their decisions was reasonable in the room it was made in. Better school, more space, a historically low rate. Reasonable, reasonable, reasonable 3 times in a row, and reasonable compounded into a 50-year-old with a 30-year mortgage. If the roughly $30,000 that went to commissions, closing costs, and fees across 2 moves had instead sat untouched in an index fund since 2011, at the market's long-run average, it would be worth something in the neighborhood of $200,000 today. That number never shows up on a closing statement. Nobody warns you about it at signing. It's not a fee. It's an absence. The size of a life that never got the chance to compound because it kept getting reset. But the real cost was never only financial. And this is the part people miss when they only look at the balance sheet. The doorframe family has one set of neighbors who have watched their kids grow up, literally, from a front porch that's seen 20 Halloweens in a row. They know which house on the block will have the good candy. They know the sound their own front door makes when it needs oil. There is a version of comfort that only exists after a decade in one place, one that has nothing to do with square footage and can't be purchased with a better rate. The Move family has a beautiful house. The garage fits 3 cars. The floor plan is exactly what they pictured at that barbecue back in 2011, and they will be paying for it until they are 79. Ask them if it was worth it, and they'll say yes, and they'll mean it. Because from inside any single decision, it always was. Nobody signs a mortgage they believe is a mistake. The mistake, if there is one, only exists in the shape of the whole pattern. And nobody gets to see the whole pattern from inside a single Tuesday. There's a strange kind of wealth that doesn't show up as a number at all. It's knowing which floorboard creaks before your foot lands on it. It's a mail carrier who's called you by name for a decade. It's a kid who doesn't remember a single other address, who will, 20 years from now, drive past that same door frame with someone else's name pinned to the mailbox and feel the particular ache of a place that stayed exactly itself, while everything inside it grew up and left anyway. That ache is not available to a family who moved 4 times. It requires 19 years in the same coordinates to even become possible. Staying in one house for 20 years doesn't make headlines. It doesn't make for a good caption. It is a driveway crack you stop noticing and a pencil line that climbs an inch or two every June. And one day you look up and the mortgage is gone and your kid is taller than the doorframe. And somehow both of those things happen at the exact same unremarkable pace, one ordinary year at a time. You already know which version of this you're living, not because your choices were foolish, they almost certainly weren't, but there is a door in your house right now with room on the frame for one more line. That space is not nothing. What you do with it next is the only part of this story that hasn't been written yet.